Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube live where we are going to be breaking down Greg and Victoria on the Vial Files. The episode just dropped last night. We're also going to talk a little bit about Johnny's recent podcast. He did the Almost Famous podcast last week, which I listened to and took some spark notes. So, going to be sharing some sides of that story as well and just debriefing the entire thing. And this pretty much puts an end to Bachelor in Paradise, which was a very long season, but we all were invested. I know it ended last week, so a lot of people are probably moving on with their lives. But for those of us who really were invested in the season, this was the biggest scandal of the entire season that really carried us through the finale, and getting the closure on everything that happened after listening to Nick's podcast last night really just puts everything into perspective. And now is the time to just talk about everything for the final time. So welcome to my channel. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are new here. And thank you all so much for joining the live chat. Give this a thumbs up. If you are in the live chat, I'd really appreciate if you guys started commenting, sharing your opinions. I know some of you might be cooking or doing work, so this could be background noise, but if you're fully engaged, let me know because I want to read some of your comments and answer some questions. My first question for you guys is, did anyone listen to the podcast, or did you guys not listen and you're just relying on me or other Bachelor recappers who are recapping it? That's what I first want to know, because I took a long list of spark notes, the entire podcast, which was an hour and 44 minutes. So it was really long. However, I skipped the ads, and then there was a section where callers called in and Nick gives them like relationship advice, and Victoria and Greg were there for that. I skipped that section too, not because it's not probably good, but just because the podcast was so long and I was trying to get these TikToks up as fast as possible. If you saw my videos yesterday, I did a 5-part series recapping everything everything that Victoria and Greg said. It was a very long series. It probably took me about like an hour, maybe more, I don't know, to just do them back to back. Like I was literally just posting it, editing it, posting it on Instagram, and then back to the drawing board, like looking at all my notes. So it was a really long night after a very long podcast. Okay, Erin says that she didn't listen. Marcel says, I haven't listened yet, only to your recaps, but I do plan on listening at some point. And then Tabby says, I didn't listen. And then Bittersweet Coffee says, it seems like all parties were at fault at some point. Well, of course, parties are always at fault when there's a disagreement. Whenever there's a breakup or an argument, whether it's friends, family, like it's always a 50-50 thing, right? Maybe not always, but a lot of the time. So I'm just going to get into the spark notes and read everything I took and go through it and give my opinion. So definitely, thanks for joining. Stay a while. So Victoria and Greg on Nick's podcast. They start the podcast with like a little debrief with Nick and his two hosts. Shout out Ali and Amanda. Nick says Johnny doesn't have any evidence Victoria cheated, and he's going off rumors he's heard from a party that happened at Nick's house. Everyone has bias, and there's nothing you can say. Like, Nick is friends with both of them, and he knows more to the story than everyone else. Everybody sticks up for their friends. The theme of the episode is, when does someone have the right to say they don't want to be in this relationship or a relationship, and when can they move on? So the interview starts at 10:17. This is literally like a live reading with Zachary Reality. I'm crying. This is literally a live reading. This is so funny. Okay. Y'all here. Y'all here. Okay, let's keep going. So, it's been a tough week for Victoria. The hardest part is for her, what she says, and is seeing things that aren't true and seeing her character being questioned. She says Andrew and Justin were on the beach, and it got brought up that Victoria and Greg were friends before Paradise, but Greg wasn't going to Paradise, and he already made that decision. And Victoria wanted to go. So they had a brief communication before the show. Since they were friends, they said they hung out at like Gov Ball, and like everyone in Bachelor Nation knows each other. She texted him in April, basically asking him if he was going to Paradise. She said that she asked him because she was trying to get a feel for who's going, and this is just what everybody does. Everybody just like texts each other before Paradise being like, are you going, are you going? So that's what she said. They've been friends for the past year, and right around April, when they were in casting, Victoria asked Greg if he was going platonic. After she texted him, they never hung out. They've hung out in group settings at a Super Bowl party, Gov Ball. Greg says he's always been attracted to Victoria, but they didn't have anything. Greg was in and out of a relationship overseas, so we know he had that girlfriend in Paris. Her name was Clemens. He never really talked too much about it. But I feel like everybody in Bachelor Nation that was talking about it was just like always, getting all the details, like myself, whenever they posted like at the same locations and stuff. Okay. So Greg was in and out of a relationship that was overseas. He knew Paradise wasn't going to be the right thing for him. Greg's relationship ended in the middle of Paradise. So while they were there in Mexico, that's when his relationship ended. Andrew came home early and told Greg that Victoria was engaged to Johnny. Greg was upset. As messy as it seems, Greg is grateful for the timing. They both had to go through their own stuff. So the reason he was upset is because he was saying that he really wanted Victoria to come back single. As soon as he was single, he wanted Victoria to come back single. And somebody brought this up in my comment section on TikTok. They said, it's not that I don't think that they were cheating, because I don't, but it seems like they both had a wandering eye when they were in their relationships. And I honestly think, yeah, that pretty much confirms this. If Greg is so quick to think about Victoria after his breakup, and Victoria is so quick to think about Greg after her breakup, like they definitely had a wandering eye before. And they kind of admitted that too on the podcast. That they always had like an interest in each other, but it was just never the right timing because Greg was in another relationship. You can't just, I don't know, break up with someone for someone else. It really just happened when they both ended up being single. So, you know, yeah, you ever have a crush on someone that you're friends with for a while and then like they're in a relationship, so you just like don't act on it? I feel like that's what Greg was trying to say, and Victoria was trying to say too. So, Victoria goes to Paradise. She is already friendly with a couple of the guys. So that's why I think it's interesting she took Justin on a date, because it sounds like she was friends with Justin before Paradise too. So, I don't know. Maybe she just needed someone to go on a date with, and she didn't really want to risk taking a new guy. And that's what she said about Johnny, that she liked about him, is that, she didn't really know anything about him, and she was getting to know him from scratch, not from an edit on a show, because, Bachelorette filmed before they even left for Paradise. But then that was also her demise, because then when she got back from Paradise, or their demise, because when they got back from Paradise and Victoria was watching the season, she was just like, wait, this isn't what you all told me on the beach. Victoria was saying that she had no idea that the reason Johnny left Gabby's season is because he didn't want to get engaged. So she was shocked watching that, and she felt misled by Johnny on the beach, like he wasn't being his full self. And when they got home and they started to learn about each other in the real world, that's when she learned a lot about him. So that's kind of what played into their breakup to begin with, and that's what was the starting. That's what ultimately broke them up, that in regards to the toxicity, since they were fighting so early so quickly, and their relationship ended 3 weeks. Like she broke off the engagement 3 weeks after she got home from Paradise. Okay, I need to get back to my notes because I don't want to miss up any part of the story. Noelle says, I can understand Victoria being upset at Johnny not telling her why he left Gabby's season, because even the fans were like, isn't he not ready to be married? Well, that was the first reaction. When Johnny got cast for Paradise, everybody was like, wait, what? Did he even leave Mexico? Why is Johnny going? Because what we saw is that Johnny didn't want an engagement. So why is he now going to be ready for it when he literally had 2 weeks in between Gabby and Rachel's season, maybe 3 weeks? Like never made sense for him to go to Paradise. But then, you look at Paradise as it's just like a place people date and go to the beach and stuff. So it's not like, no one expected Johnny to get engaged, right? But Victoria was saying all season that she wanted an engagement. That's why she came here. She wants to move on to that part of her life. So I wonder if Johnny was trying to people please Victoria because he was just so infatuated by her that he just wanted to like really put on his best self. And it wasn't until the end, at least on the show, when Johnny started to open up about his insecurities, and Victoria was saying that he opened up more about those insecurities off camera after the show, which does make sense. But it just didn't seem like that he was all he said to be, and they just weren't aligning in their life. So Victoria basically says that back on the beach, there was this age gap between them that she had reservations about. She was 29, and I guess he was 25 at the time. Now he's 26 because his birthday was September 20th. Imagine he had a birthday in paradise like everybody else. Honestly, Tabby, you bring up a really good point. I'm surprised Gabby didn't tell her on the beach as well. When Gabby and Rachel came to the beach, they really only talked about Logan and their experience with Logan. And I did see a couple fans saying on Twitter that they were surprised or they were expecting Gabby to maybe tell Victoria about Johnny. And I wonder why she didn't. Was there just no timing? Did the producers not want her to? I kind of feel like the producers really wanted Johnny and Victoria to get engaged. I think that they really wanted as many engagements as possible, considering last year we had like 7 couples. This year we only got 2 engagements, and then so many breakups. And I don't really know the validity of some of the other, people who might be rekindling things or say they're rekindling things, but it really only seems like we have 2 happy relationships, Michael and Danielle and Brandon and Serene. So I don't know if the producers were also encouraging them to get engaged, because it didn't seem like Victoria was truly ready for an engagement either after 3 weeks. Like, I almost feel like maybe she got wrapped up in the moment as well and being like, well, this is why we're here. This is what I'm supposed to do, because Victoria had so much to learn about Johnny after the show. So it just feels like they both rushed into the engagement, which probably comes with the pressure of the show. The proposal's set up, like they pay for your ring. Like, you usually don't meet someone in the real world and just like buy them a ring. Like, you get a ring, you get like options. Neil Lane just comes in like, and they set it all up perfectly. So this is why I understand why people on this show and a lot of reality shows get engaged so quickly. And it's maybe they're not like, they're just rushing into it. So some of her reservations, hey, oh my God, I'm so weird. Okay, so some of her reservations, where do I begin? Is that he initially said he owned a bar, and then when time went on, he said he managed the bar, and then when the career goal questions got brought up, which is what we saw on the show, and we were all like, why is Victoria saying that? Like, what are your career goals? Like, that was a moment on the show. There was too many cast members on the show. That's my opinion, because we didn't get to learn a lot about these relationships because there was just too many cast members. There was too many people coming in and out. They should have just focused on like 4 or 5 couples. And I think that's what Love is Blind does really well on Netflix, is that they focus on 4 to 5 couples and they get rid of everybody else in the beginning. And I think Bachelor in Paradise, since they love stealing ideas from other people and their show has gone on the decline, they need to steal that idea from Love is Blind. They need to just focus on 4 to 5 couples and really dive into their relationship. There's some free advice. That's where the career goal question started. She wanted to know what he did. He didn't have a steady source of income, and she said that's fine. Like, she would literally date an Uber driver, which, I mean, I don't really believe, but I love that she said that. She said that's fine, but she felt like he wasn't fully transparent and Johnny misled her. He wasn't what he was. Victoria never saw Johnny on Gabby's season, so she had no idea about the reasons why he left Gabby's season. And she found out after they got engaged, and that he said on Gabby's season that he was never engaged. She felt lied to. She walked into an engagement without all the facts. She said, I'm not perfect, but I am honest. She wasn't upset that he didn't have a set job. She wanted him to succeed and supported him, but also encouraged him to get the ball rolling. She felt like he was a different person off the beach. On the beach, he was very secure, but when outside factors played in real life, his insecurities started to come out. If Johnny wanted to be a rapper, she was ready to support him. She thought, but he couldn't figure out what he wanted to do, and she was engaged to someone who already figured it out. And I think this also can come into play in regards to Logan and Kate's situation, but not really, because I do feel like Logan has his career figured out. He kind of, he shared that on the tell-all, like when he defended Kate. He was like, I moved to LA, I moved to San Diego, like I did snorkeling, I walked dogs to get by, and like really showed his journey. And I think Victoria was making it clear that she's not trying to look down on Johnny for being a little bit younger and not having his life figured out. Like, I have so many friends that are 24, 25 that are still in school or in graduate school or not in school at all and just don't have jobs and don't have apartments yet or still live at home. Like, not everyone can figure it out. There was a 2-year pandemic. Like, I don't think Victoria was trying to bash Johnny in that way. But what she said is, like, if you're not at that point in your life, if you haven't found yourself, you haven't found your passion, you haven't found your stability, are you even ready for an engagement and married? Like, you're just not ready. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm a few years older. I have a stable job. I have a home. Like, I'm ready. So they really were just at 2 different stages of life. And I think that is what the core issue was. And I think that's probably why it turned toxic, because they rushed into an engagement that neither of them probably wanted in the moment. And they were just so angry that they were stuck in this engagement. This show was going to air, and they realized they weren't happy and they realized they weren't compatible as soon as they got back. Especially Victoria. It sounds like Johnny was the one that needed more time to process everything. Victoria was kind of over it a lot quickly. She said that after 3 weeks, she broke off the engagement. She asked the show to get them a couples counselor so that they can work on their problems. She wanted to put effort into it, but as soon as the toxic signs showed, she just wanted to get out of there because she's been in toxic relationships in the past, and she just like saw the signs and just was over it and didn't want to be in it, and it was rushed. So it's just like, and that kind of goes back to Nick's theme. Hold on, let me take a sip because my mouth gets dry. And that kind of goes back to Nick's theme of the whole podcast, is that when is it time to just say you're over it, and when is it time to move on? If you're in a relationship with someone for a year, it's probably a lot harder to move on. You probably put more effort into it. But Johnny and Victoria dated for 6 weeks. The engagement was so rushed. Like, how much effort do we really expect her to put in? And I am like, I'm just reading everything and doing my analysis. I'm not team Johnny, I'm not team Victoria, but I'm explaining Victoria's side of the podcast. And I'm going to keep on incorporating Johnny's side because I listened to his on the Almost Famous podcast as well. I promise I'm going to get there. So they started fighting. She did want to work on things in the beginning. She originally wanted to give it the time. She put effort into it, but things got toxic so fast. She's been in toxic relationships before and they had issues. So that's when she saw the signs. She did throw a wine glass. She wasn't an angel. They got into a heated fight on their first happy couples trip, and they were watching back one of his episodes with Gabby. Johnny loved his beard and thought he looked better with a beard, and he didn't have a beard on Paradise. Johnny said sorry that there's a couple grammar issues. Okay. Johnny said if he had heard that he could have been the Bachelor or something like that. If he had a beard, he could have been the Bachelor. Like, he made a joke. Victoria says, yeah, he made a joke, but there's truth to every joke. Victoria said you weren't going to be the Bachelor, LOL. And Johnny said, coming from you, who has a reputation of being a homewrecker, because that's what Victoria's reputation was on The Bachelor when she was on for Peter's season. Remember, there was that ex-girlfriend that came in on the show and basically warned Peter about Victoria, but didn't really give any context. It was like an old friend of Victoria. There's just so many rumors about Victoria, but this was just like a joke that Johnny probably made. He probably didn't mean that. Johnny also commented on my Instagram reel last night that he never wanted to be the Bachelor. He deleted the comment, but one of my followers told me about it, and I was like, oh my gosh. All love to Johnny too, I promise. Johnny said, what did he say? Something about being the Bachelor as a joke, whatever. Victoria, so she was so hurt that he used that against her when he called her the homewrecker and he said that comment to her. And Victoria was also talking about like the logistics of being the Bachelor and how like she could have been the Bachelorette, but like not that she could have been the Bachelorette, but that she was final 3 and she was never considered to be the Bachelorette. Like, they already have that kind of pre-established. I don't know. It just started off as like a weird joke. I think it kind of sounded like an ego thing. And they started arguing and it got so bad. They separated, called each other's friends. She overheard him on the phone saying, yeah, I called her a homewrecker. And then she threw a wine glass, not at him, but outside. So Johnny was outside on the phone and she didn't like the way he was speaking about her. So she threw a wine glass in his direction, not at him though, just like outside. She said that there was no harm. I don't know. Glass is harm, but this is where she got emotional because she really said that she doesn't want to be that person. She's not that person. It was like an act of anger. I mean, I've never thrown a wine glass at someone, but I mean, I think everyone gets angry. I'm thinking about like the Jersey Shore when Snooki was throwing wine glasses at Mike the Situation when he was trying to bring up rumors that that Snooki cheated on Gianni at the time with Mike the Situation. Do you guys remember that? Noelle says, good on Victoria to know her and enforce her boundaries quickly. That's hard to do. Tabby says, I think those are things you learn over time to ask the important questions first before feelings override. Maybe that sounds cold, but I've seen so many people be hurt over things like that. Great points, guys. Great points. So this is where the C word comes in. Victoria says that she's hurt that Johnny won't take ownership for calling her the C word. But what Johnny actually said is, why are you being such an effing C word? Which Johnny said is different than actually calling her the C word. And Victoria felt like it wasn't. And that is an issue that they talked about in couples therapy. And Johnny just like didn't really get where she was coming from. And Johnny's reasoning for that is because he has a lot of British friends. And that's just how they use it. And she also said that she's never met his British friends and that he's from Jupiter, Florida, but I guess he lives in Jersey. I don't know. It's obviously not right to call people that word. I think that a lot of people get really angry in the moment and things are said and everyone has growth and maturing to do. And I'm sure Johnny has learned from this breakup and I'm sure Victoria has learned from this breakup, and it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. I feel like Johnny's a great guy. I really think that after watching him on 2 seasons of Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise, like I really do think he is a genuine, sweet guy who's funny, he's handsome. I feel like he has his life ahead of him, and I think that he just needs to kind of stay focused and not spiral, because I'm sure that this noise is probably a lot for him. This relationship was kind of shoved in his face on social media publicly. That's probably so hard. Johnny did say on the Almost Famous podcast that that was supposed to be his happy moment with Victoria on the reunion, in the hot seat. And he was in the trailer by himself. He had to call his mom, and Victoria shared that happy moment with Greg. You got to feel bad for Johnny. You got to feel bad. I feel like regardless of the situation, like he was on TV for a year and that's how it ended for him. The girl that he fell in love with, got engaged to, leaves him for the hottest guy in Bachelor Nation after he does 2 seasons back to back. Like that's got to be so hard. So we got to show some love to Johnny. So Johnny basically downplayed the issues they had in the relationship because he thought that they can get through it, but Victoria didn't want to. So Johnny was just really trying to make it work way more than Victoria was. He was putting way more effort into it. She just checked out. She said it was over for her and she checked out, but they did have multiple conversations before it finally ended. So I think that's why it's a little messy with the timeline, is because it seems like Victoria like broke up with him, but he didn't accept it. But then she agreed to just like put effort into it, but she already kind of checked out of the relationship. It seems like she just really checked out weeks before he did. So I guess that's where the lines are really blurred. So it's really just like, did she specifically tell him that it was finally over? And did she start talking to Greg immediately after? Or did she start talking to Greg in the timeline when she was over it, but he didn't know it was over, or he didn't accept that it was over? But for her, it was over. It really just sounds like it was over for her like a month and a half before it was over for him. And that's why I think the whole thing just seems so tricky and shaky. So Natalie's infamous birthday party. This is such a crazy story, honestly. Johnny said everything was great until that party. Victoria said they had so many problems way before, which is what we got into, because they also got a noise violation at their Airbnb. Like their toxic fightings and those things that we've talked about started right away. So Victoria said they had so many problems way before. They broke up the engagement 3 weeks after they got home, but still tried to work on things. She said, we're not engaged, but I'm open to seeing where this relationship could go if they get the proper amount of help. The show gave them a couples therapy. He called her the C word 2 days before she went to the party in LA. So she didn't even want to talk to him. That's what she was saying. So Johnny was saying that after the party where she was with, Greg, and they were hanging out at the party, that's when Victoria, that's when Johnny said that Victoria checked out. But Victoria is saying that 2 days before, that's when the C word thing happened or whatever. And that's why she stopped talking to him. So, and they also were saying at the party that she was hanging out with Justin for 2 hours and that she barely talked to Greg. So, where are we in the story? So, he had a ticket to Nashville before she even left to go to LA, and that was his last ditch effort to work it out. Victoria says they barely spoke to each other at the party talking about Greg. Okay. So, her demeanor was off because of what he said to her before she left. She was cold because they were basically over, and it was over before that. Johnny was hanging on for hope. His birthday was September 20th, and she told him no when he asked her to hang out. Sometimes people need extra time for closure, but she was checked out for weeks and he hasn't. She was patient with him, giving him extra closure, and he came over with his suitcase and he expected to stay over. It was a 45-minute conversation and she said, "This is over and I'm sorry you're hurting, but this is done." He asked for one last night together and she said no, and he didn't want to feel stupid going back to the boys like Tyler and all his friends, so he booked a hotel. And that was September 20th, September 21st, September 19th. One of those days, that's when it was officially over. So Victoria said that she ended things in like August, end of August, but they had the one breakup conversation September 1st. And then around September 20th is when Johnny officially ended things. And then Greg and Victoria start talking the end of September. Okay, welcome if you guys are just joining. We're gonna get to the Greg stuff. I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit because I'm reading my notes, but also explaining what's happening. I'm gonna continue, but definitely let me know if you're here in the live chat. Say hello. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys have any questions, if you're here, just say what's up. And I will read some of those as we go through. Okay, let's get to the Greg part because I'm sure some of you guys have to get back to work. Greg and Victoria start talking end of September. Victoria, after she broke up with Johnny, Victoria then gives Greg a call after that to catch up on life and to tell him that Johnny and her weren't together anymore and they went from there. She understands why people are frustrated. She moved on so quickly. Greg then visited her in Nashville. Greg was really hesitant after they hung out for a night. Greg said they obviously liked each other, but this still wasn't good timing. He knows it wasn't the best way to start a brand new relationship in the midst of the show being aired, even though they had such a spark. Victoria agreed it was logical. 24 hours later, they wanted to see each other again. They kept in communication, but they were like, "Oh, we shouldn't be talking, but like we have to," like one of those things. He really wanted to see if they could actually work things out. However, they couldn't go out in Nashville or New York because they weren't allowed to be seen in public. So Greg really wanted to take her out for a drink. So that's why they went to Italy. He says Rome changed everything. When they were in Italy, they felt so normal. They were all like, they were just able to like walk free for a few days before they got spotted. They were talking about the girl who made the TikTok at the Coliseum. That's when the rumors first started on the internet. I forgot this girl's name, but we have to like tag her and give her justice below. She really started this domino effect where she was like, "I saw Greg and Victoria, like this girl started it." And then Dave Neal got some information on it. Reality Steve got pictures on it. I started hearing things about it. Everyone else started talking about it. And it was really just like this huge domino effect where then Victoria and Greg ended up getting spotted in Italy multiple times. And they said they really wanted to be incognito. They wanted to like wear wigs and put his hoodie up and his glasses down. Like they really were trying to be incognito and keep this as private as possible. They said that there was no plan at all to make this like a public thing. I mean, you really can't write this up, can you? Like this story is too crazy. Like they go on the show and then he talks to her and then they're in Italy. Like it's too crazy. Okay, the timeline. Okay, well, I feel like I've talked about all of this, but do you guys still want me to read it? Just because this is like they kind of repeated themselves. I guess a couple people also said that on about the podcast as well, that it was a little bit repetitive towards the end with the timeline because it was an hour and 44 minutes. You know, cut out the commercials. It was like an hour and 25 minutes plus the other segment in the beginning. So it was very long, but I feel like they just wanted to clarify everything because they ended up ending the podcast saying that they want to keep their relationship more on the low. This is like the interview that they're doing to just kind of say their piece on everything. So Kate says incognito at a major tourist site. So Nick also asked that, and it was almost like they were in Italy. They were being so chill and nonchalant in Italy for a few days. Victoria wanted to see the Coliseum, or you know what I'm saying? Like, she just wanted to see it. Like, they were in Italy. So that's kind of how they rationalized going to the most to a tourist attraction in Italy, because when they were there, it was like no Americans. It was just like Europeans. Like, it was whatever. Okay, so Greg and her started talking shortly after the end of September. A couple weeks went by before their first date to Rome. Rome put them in a position where it was real. 10 days later, she asked him to be her boyfriend, but he also asked her on October 31st. So that's what also I thought was interesting, is because they originally said that she asked him to be her boyfriend 10 days later. So that might have been mid-October, but he also asked her officially on October 31st. She says that if she doesn't want to be with someone, she doesn't have to, just because the world wants him to. I'm sorry he's hurting. I'm hurting too, but she should be able to move on. She started crying. She got emotional. She never cheated on Johnny. That was like a line. I feel like Nick should clip that. I never cheated on Johnny. Because this whole podcast, if you guys haven't listened to it, watch it on YouTube. Like, I feel like it was basically like it was better than the finale. It was better than the reunion and the finale. This is why I love like podcasts and YouTube videos, and so many people do, and why podcasts are so popular these days is because sometimes they're just more interesting than episodes of TV. They're just way more raw. She never cheated on him. She talked to him at the press event the next day, and Johnny admitted that he knew that. She wanted to talk to him before the reunion so they can get on the same page and not go at each other. And what ended up happening is they ended up, throwing digs at each other. She just wanted Johnny to take accountability for their relationship going downhill before she started talking to Greg. So that was her whole thing. She just wanted Johnny to admit and know that her and Greg have nothing to do with the reason why their relationship ended. Their relationship ended for all the reasons we just discussed in this live. So she just, I'm sure she had like we talked about, she's always thought Greg was cute in the back of her head for so long. Greg always thought she was hot in the back of his head for so long, but they were both in other relationships. She wanted to go to paradise. And that's why it was just like the timing. So that's why, yeah, they probably had a wandering eye for each other for a year, but they just could never like pursue it. And that's why the relationship developed so quickly, is because it was probably building in both of their heads for so long before it happened. She doesn't regret snapping at Tyler at the reunion. She said Tyler kept chiming into a situation he had no idea about. It's none of his business. And even Johnny tried to shut Tyler down because Tyler was interfering more than once. But we saw in the reunion it was only once, but she was saying it happened multiple times. Tyler had some information about it. I think he was really defensive of his friend. It's probably really hard to see your friend go through that on the show, and if he was witnessing it. So I understand that I understand that Tyler wanted to be supportive. I think that really shows how good of a friend he is. I think that it's great that Tyler is such a supportive friend to Johnny. I think that's great that he wanted to have his back. And I do think that scene where they were talking outside was really important to show both sides of the story and to kind of hear what they were saying, when they were basically saying that Victoria will do anything to fit her narrative, anything to be right and win. That's Johnny's side. And that's what Tyler was what Tyler was saying to Johnny at the reunion. We all saw it. But she basically just said, Victoria was just like, say the F out, Tyler. So where Greg and Victoria are at now, she says, with Greg, he's handled the situation with such patience and understanding and support, and has had her back 1,000% of the time. They are open and honest with each other. They don't call each other names. They don't scream at each other. They actually work and make sense. Greg has been in toxic relationships before where he doesn't have proud moments, but they've made it a priority to work on things regardless of how hard it's been. Greg has never wanted to focus on Johnny. Victoria and Greg are similar. They understand each other. They bicker sometimes, and that's normal, but they know what they need. They'll give each other space. They're both really secure with themselves. Victoria has abandonment issues. They're trying to be mindful and are hyper aware with each other. They are still in a new relationship, and it sucks to see so many people against them. They've gone through their seasons with Katie and Peter, so they've dealt with this backlash before, but this is totally different. They've been down this road before, but it's still, eating Victoria up that she is getting a lot of backlash, and it's eating Greg up to see Victoria upset, because when she went to the reunion, like, she was booed, and now all these people are saying all these nasty things about Victoria. Greg ended up going to After the Final Rose because their breakup had nothing to do with Greg. Okay, I said that. Him going to Italy made it seem like that. The producer reached out after Italy to see if Greg wanted to go to the finale. Greg knew what Johnny was going to say. Like, they kind of caught wind about the allegations that she cheated. So Greg really wanted to be there to support Victoria um, because they kind of figured it was going to be a rough road for her. So they were thinking of filming it in maybe the trailer or in the audience, or they were going to do something like maybe talk outside, like Johnny and maybe Johnny and not Johnny and Greg, but maybe like they were going to maybe film something outside. Like, but then it only ended up making sense for him to do it on the couch, so she didn't have to do it alone. And Allison, who is one of Nick's co-hosts, was saying that like she was cheering for Victoria, but like everybody else in the audience was booing for her. Like, you can only imagine how hard that is to walk onto a stage and everyone's booing for you. But at the same time, like, people also felt for Johnny. Like, look what just happened. I skipped the part. This is when they did okay. Then they did the advice segment. Greg asked her to be his girlfriend on Halloween. Neither of them love Halloween. He was stressed all day and felt like he was in the middle school again. This day when Greg was going to ask her to make it official, their cat went outside. They were so scatterbrained. Victoria was like, he just blurted it out. He couldn't say it. Greg wanted more credit than that. LOL. He said he was falling in love with her, and he says that he's completely in love with her and head over heels. And they think they're each other's person. Victoria says she does care if people hate her. She regrets saying that at the reunion. She's like, hate us all you want. But she felt so attacked. He lives in New York. She lives in Nashville. Greg is in the process of talking about moving to Nashville. That's the next step they're taking. Greg just went with her to Boston to meet part of her family. They love him. She's going to Jersey for Christmas to meet his nephews and nieces. Stay tuned in regards to the parents' blessing. I don't know if Greg already asked. This could have been a season of The Bachelor. I'm pretty sure Greg already even asked someone in her family about possibly getting engaged to her one day. They're taking this really, really fast. Victoria and Greg say they feel like they're each other's person. They could be in the same room for days on end and not get sick of each other. They see it going in the route forever, and Nick is happy for them. It's a delicate dance. They don't want to put out too much of the relationship, but they are happy. She truly wishes the best for Johnny despite everything that happened between them. And that was the last thing she said on the podcast. And that was the end of that. So that was the whole podcast. I think that Victoria and Greg seem like they are a great fit, and they just really met each other at the right time. So maybe this truly is their happily ever after and their love story. I think the relationship still is very new. And you can kind of say that maybe because of everything they just went through in the public eye, or that, it was in the public eye on this show, that like maybe that built them stronger, or maybe that just kind of like trauma bonded them. Cause like, I can't even imagine people having so many opinions about you. So I personally don't know if Victoria and Greg are going to last forever. I can also see it lasting forever, considering how many challenges they just faced so quickly and how like comfortable they seem together. But it also seems like that situation was so crazy. So I think they're really happy right now, and I don't know. It does seem really quick for the relationship to just like happen so fast. Even though I just explained for 30 minutes how it happened so fast with all the, so then it kind of makes sense if you listen. I thought Nick did a really good job asking the right questions. The one thing I wish Nick asked is, I wish that he talked about the soft launch. I wish that he talked about posting Victoria and Greg on his Instagram story, and that being like a spoiler culture. I don't know if that was like a conversation he had with producers, or what Victoria and Greg were, talking to producers about, because after those Italy pictures came out there, Victoria and Greg were getting spotted multiple times in public the weeks leading up to the reunion. So I was kind of curious about the ins and outs of those things. And I wish that those were addressed on the podcast, but I guess they weren't allowed. I didn't think that Nick was being too biased. I feel like those are his friends. He asked them really tough questions. He said that Johnny is invited on his podcast anytime, which Johnny probably wouldn't want to go on, because he said that he was annoyed with Nick because Nick was posting things. And him and Johnny have met before, and it was just not fair to be rubbed in his face. And I think that Johnny should do Nick's podcast. And I just feel like Johnny needs to, if he wants. I feel like Johnny did 2 podcasts last week. But I feel like he should do Nick's podcast in like 6 months. I think that really worked great for Nate, who had a really, toxic breakup with Michelle. it really worked out for Nate, where I felt like as a viewer, I was able to understand him and see his growth because it's been a few months since the show, and just kind of like really just like get to know him better. I felt like Tino did Nick's podcast way too early. I think we needed to kind of hear Tino's side of the story, but I think Tino needs to do like an interview again. Like I just think that the show is just so draining, and being in like the most high profile bachelor toxic breakup of the year is just probably so exhausting and draining. So I feel like we really only understand these people after they have room and time to grow in a few months. And I feel like I really enjoy. Noelle says, I loved Nate's episode on the Vial Files. Me too. I really enjoy Nick's podcast. Like, I really think he does a good job. And like, there's so many opinions about him, and I feel like so many people just like really don't like him, but I feel like Nick is just not as bad as some of you guys make him to be. I feel like he does a really good job on his podcast. Like, it's quality content. Like, he's giving us like these interviews. Like, this is what we all like want. Like, we want these questions answered, and he gets them. So shout out to him for real. And shout out to Allison. She is a friend of mine. She's on the podcast. So we got to send her love, and Amanda. And that was kind of the whole thing. I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts that you want to share. I definitely feel like we kind of went over everything and explained everything. So, let's wish Greg and Victoria the best. Let's wish Johnny the best. I hope that he can kind of get closure from listening to the podcast. I wish Johnny the best in his rapping career. I totally think he should go for it. Maybe he'll write a song or something about this experience. I feel like a lot of people on reality TV write songs. So maybe he'll do that. And I hope that Johnny just finds healing and, and knows that we still support him and we still want the best for him. And Victoria said that as well. And same with Victoria and Greg. Like, you guys do you. Thanks for the, entertainment. I mean, this is their personal lives, but this is just such a fascinating like story that played out on TV. This is why reality TV is just so interesting. So we got to thank all of them for just being so vulnerable, all three of them, just for sharing their stories with us and letting us all talk about their relationship. I can't even imagine how hard it is. So I, only wanted to say as much positive things as I possibly could on this YouTube live stream. And just kind of recap everything that both of them said on their podcasts. I did also post a Johnny TikTok, which is like 1minute 40 seconds, which also like really highlights his side of the story. And I also shared some notes on my Instagram story, which is saved under my podcast recaps. With like 4 pages of all of Johnny's side of the story. So I highly recommend you guys go check out my Instagram and my TikTok to find that, just so you can fully understand his side as well. I feel like I made sure to still give his side in this, but I also really just wanted to focus on the Victoria and Greg interview because that's what just dropped yesterday. But definitely go check out the podcast if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for listening. It is time to end this live stream. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts down below. Even if you missed the live chat, you can just leave your thoughts in the comments. I definitely want to read all of them and respond and hear what you guys are saying. So be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. So I have a month. We're a little over halfway there. So please subscribe, ring the bell so you're notified whenever I post on here. And I will be doing my next YouTube live next Monday night at 7:30 PST and 10:30 EST. So it's a little late. But I'm going to be doing lives every single Monday night for the winter. So definitely come join, and we'll just kind of talk about reality TV and what's going on in my life. And I'm going to bring like products of like PR packages. You can watch the last one. I talked about my trip in Austin, just like whatever's going on, just like quick 30-minute lives. So definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you all so much for joining, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.